I have a question for you guys. Do you guys care about comic books? And that might sound like a very simple quote. Well, I read them all the time. I talk about them all the time. I'm watching your videos about them. Of course, I care about comic books, but I don't want to ask it that simply. I want to ask it because I meet a lot of people. I meet a lot of. I sell my artwork. I sell work at conventions, at street fairs, at any number of different things, and I meet a lot of people. This summer, I'm very fortunate. I'm meeting a lot of people. I met somebody from New York, Savannah, Georgia, all sorts of people from across the country, and I meet them, and I've met them at some comic book conventions that I've attended, and I meet these people, and they say, "Oh, I love comic books," and they tell me how much they like comics, how much they want to write their own comic. So I met a student going to Georgia for sequential art, and I look at some of their friends. I talk to these people, and they all would tell you, I like and care about comic books. Then I talk to them a little bit more, and they don't have a whole lot of comic books. They don't read a whole lot of comic books. They weren't at the comic book store buying new comic books on a regular basis for any number of years. Okay, I look at their comic books, and they're not really comic books. I look at what they do, I look at their influences, and they're not artists, they're not a whole lot of anything. They have work that is cartoon-ish in style, they have comic book-esque work, but to say they care about comic books and not really own a whole lot of comic books and just get in on the hype. They like the Marvel movies, and they like different cartoons on the television and different things like that, but I get to the base of what they're doing, and I think, well, you're a hobbyist. I've noticed a lot of art students that I've met, and this is at nobody in particular, but I've noticed a lot of people that I've met who major in some of these fields are hobbyists at best, who take very little interest in their work, and they complain about it a lot, and they say, oh, being an artist, and I think you're in the club, but you're not participating. You're in the club, you're doing the pantomime of I'm an artist, so I really care about art, but then when you talk to them about it, it's the last thing that they really want to talk about. They want a neat club to join, they want a neat title on their name, but outside of that, I mean, they're not very impressive. And again, don't, anybody who knows me personally, don't take this as such. If I have a problem with you, of course, I'll tell you about it. But that's why I'm bringing you guys this question, because you guys obviously like manga, you like comic books, you're here for a reason. But I wonder how much people like comic books, and that extends to the comic book writers and artists themselves, as a lot of them don't really treat this medium with what you would expect from people who respect it. I just got this comic book. Where'd I put it? I'm very happy that I got this comic. I got this for $10. On the market, it's $40 right now. I got it from Thrift Books. The binding is a little beat up, so they said it was in very good condition. I wouldn't say very good as a beat up binding, but it works. Everything is in there. There are no torn out pages. And I'm looking at this thing, and man, oh man, I could show you guys any one of the pages, especially this wraparound by Lynn Varley and Miller right here with Leonidas and the Moon. Oh, it's absolutely spectacular and stellar. Go look at Cartoonist Kayfabe's video about 300. You guys, this is beautiful. This is gorgeous work. I'm extremely excited to be reading this and be influenced by it. And I bring that to you because I also recently read, as you guys may have seen in a previous video, I read Fantastic Four Full Circle by Alex Ross, and all that book told me is Alex Ross is as much a fan, if not more of a fan of comic books than most of you. As a matter of fact, probably more than me, that he did this book on his own. The heart and soul that he poured into this book is beyond what I've seen from anybody in the comic book industry in the last 5 to 10 years. Mainstream pros, independents alike. It was a love letter to the classic comic books, to sci-fi. It was a flex of his superiority as an artist above almost all of his contemporaries. As an artist, period. Not so much as a comic book artist, as an artist, which I recognize can be different things, but even still, there's nobody who could have done it like Alex Ross. And when I look at some independent comic books, I understand the independent scene is going to be more shallow. You're not going to have the same height of skill. You're not going to have the same discipline in the independent scene as you may have in the mainstream scene, because the payment is different. You're not getting paid month to month. You're not getting paid the same page rates. You're not getting under the same deadlines as you may in the mainstream industry. So you're not going to get the same thing out of it. But I look at some of these books, and I look at some of the comic books, and that's why I'm extending this to the people making the comic books, because I look at them and I think the line art for this book is not bad. I like the line art. It's competent. It shows me what I need to be shown for the comic book. Then they color it. And I think, that's no good. I look at the colors and it becomes almost indifferent to the rest of the comic book style. The colors are so heartless. The colors are so soulless. And once again, nobody in particular. I look as a general idea. I look across the landscape of these books that are coming out, and I think, what's the deal, man? You have these colors that are digitally coloring everything, and they're doing it in the most stale and boring ways, particularly when they color cities. Have you guys noticed that? The way that they color cities is changing, and they're using a lot of gray and blue tones on the city skylines, which is literally correct, but that's just it. It's literally correct. It doesn't enhance the line art in question. Sometimes they remove the colors from these cityscapes, and I think that boring cityscape that was colored with gray tones and blue tones is now actually pretty interesting when you just show me the line art. So you have these colorists doing colors that are actually taking away from the line art itself, which your job as a colorist is to enhance and articulate the line art even better than the line artist did himself. That's the point of color. It's to throw color on it, make it a little bit better. But instead they're detracting from it. And they're detracting from it, and I look at mainstream books, and I think the mainstream books aren't being colored very well. I look at mainstream artists, and they're not illustrating anything to these exceptional degrees outside of somebody like Alex Ross. And then I pick up a book like 300, and I look at any individual page within this book, and I see colors that match perfectly the grimy, very dense, dirty style that Frank Miller is trying to portray within this war, all done by Lynn Varley, who is an exceptional colorist, is an exceptional watercolor artist on her own. I don't expect everybody to be Lynn Varley, but you would imagine that people who enjoy this medium, who appreciate this medium, and have the appreciation that they claim to have for this medium would treat it as such. Maybe they think they do, which is fine, but if we base it off of thought, then, you really have no foundation there. I'm talking about what comes out. And when you look at what comes out, well, it's stuff that doesn't have a whole lot of respect for the medium itself. It doesn't have a whole lot of regard for what is capable in the storytelling medium that is comic books. You have artists that don't change over 10 years, 15, 20 years, that don't change, they don't adapt, they don't experiment the same way. Everything that Frank Miller does is almost an experimentation, and his ability to capture bold, evocative imagery in his artwork is unmatched. You might not like his style. You might think that his style is very crude and unusual, but that's what makes it work. Versus some guy in comic books who could do figures perfectly and do all the cross-hatching techniques and do everything right. I think that's boring compared to Frank Miller. All these people who are doing it right are getting beat by this guy who's doing everything wrong. Right? And then they're not adapting or changing. I think of all the fields in the world that you can adapt and you can change over time, I feel like art and cartooning is the one field where you almost have the obligation to change and continuously learn about your style, about the world around you, about art itself and expression, that you would change and adapt and evolve to continue to tell more stories. But it just seems like the current guard in comic books in the mainstream is very complacent. And is very, I'm good at this, so I'm going to do it that way. And I think that's not somebody who cares. That's somebody who has been here and says, okay, I can stay. I can stay because I'm making some good money from it, and it's, I know it, so why not? I think that, I don't like that attitude. Maybe that's just me. I don't really like that attitude. And whenever you say you care about something, that means you're putting effort into it. That's not effort. What you are capable of, your bar, that's not effort. Going above the bar, experimenting, doing something a little outside of the box, you don't see that from a whole lot of people. And I don't like that. What do you guys think? Am I crazy?